This isn't going to be easy. This is going to be the farthest thing from easy. I did say it would be all the truth, but there are some things that I can't even put on here because of content restrictions. But I'll tell you what I can, and I'll let you. I know you're going to judge, and that's okay. I deserve it. I'll tell you what I can, but it's time that I told the truth. And it's time that the world sees it. Um, See, we've all done stuff in the past, and in some cases it's unforgivable. But I think this is probably the most important thing I think I could ever put out there, and it's for to people to hear what I have to say. And I know a lot of you said, dude, you just did like 24 hours of streaming pretty much. Well, I did stop. I took a couple of breaks, and I am still getting over that head cold. But why would we want to hear more from you now? Now, this video will be made public, but it's more directed towards about 3 people, maybe 4. We'll top it out at about 5. Um, Look, hang on, I gotta mute this mic. We'll continue this in just a moment. I have to take a call. So, for obvious reasons, there are some things that I can't tell you on here because it would massively violate YouTube's terms of service. And the things that I leave out are both good and bad, and they've happened to me over the course of my life. And this is not some sob story to get sympathy or anything like that. In fact, just the opposite. I will tell you the truth. All right. When I was about 3, maybe 4, I have a distinct memory of learning how to tie my shoes and hearing my mom and my dad, my biological parents, arguing over me doing a body slam and breaking my arm because I saw it on the television and wanted to replicate it. Okay. And that fight and that argument carried on for me, by the way, it felt like forever. I just couldn't wait for them to stop. Okay. Years later they got divorced, and there's a whole lot of memories between then and then that I'm not going to say here on YouTube. Which, by the way, the fact that I broke my arm at that age, trying to body slam in my crib, is baller in my mind. I think that's amazing. I'm not saying that I was neglected or abused by any stretch of the imagination at that point. In fact, when you consider the real neglect that happens in some foreign countries and how bad their living situation is, I actually had it pretty cushy compared to some people on this planet. I'm rambling. Let's fast forward, okay? My parents get divorced, and my dad remarries my stepmother after dating a couple of women, and some things happen, and next thing I know, I'm living with my dad instead of my mom. There's a whole story on that I can't tell on YouTube. Because again, it violates YouTube's terms of service. But before I did, I was living with my great grandparents, and I went to school at a small Christian kindergarten, daycare, first, second grade, right? It was something like that, right? My parents, if you want better timing information, they could probably be more specific about what grade it was. We used to have this annoying kid who used to tell me, "Oh, I'm shaking in my boots," like that's all that he knew how to say, right? Well, at that age, I was pushed down a slide, racked my back on the bottom to the point where I'd lost my breath and had literally thrown up on account of it. I got rushed to the hospital by my great grandparents and my mom. That's my dad's grandparents, by the way, and my mom. Um, you know, they met me at the hospital. I think my mom met me at the hospital or something. I'm not sure. But someone checked up on me, made sure I was doing okay, and I was, and everything was fine. And this is not a medical story. This is a peer story, okay? So after that, I got pulled from the school where I had friends, where I was enjoying learning, and my great grandparents were teaching me very important things. My dad pulled me out of that environment and drugged me up to the northern part of the state of Maine. And before, Dad, if you see this, before I go any further, let me say this is not my usual anger and hate filled tirade, okay? I just want you to listen. Don't talk. Alright? Don't even think. Just listen to what I'm saying to you. And there are things that I do have to leave out of here because of the terms and service. Okay? So at that point, my dad marries my stepmom, and of course my idiot kid brain, because little kid doesn't really process change very well, right? Gets into a pattern and structure and all this stuff, right? All right. He goes up to northern Maine to live in the native reservation. And at that time, we were staying at his stepmom's one of her cabins. It was the nicer, in my opinion, it was the nicer cabin, and he'd do stuff around there for her and visit with his biological dad, my grandpa Terry. And then I got to meet kids my age, my cousins, effectively. And now some of these people, my cousins, I don't agree with ideologically, but I still look at them as friends and family. And even to this day, I still have some of them on my friends list, even though, biologically speaking, we're not related. Okay? So I got up there, and I went to school. I think, let me make sure I get the order of the schools right. I believe I was going to Dana Point at that time first, and then I think it was Princeton second. Okay. At the first school, I was pretty much left alone, but I was a little turd burglar. My dad hadn't met my stepmom at that point, but I was just getting into all kinds of trouble like a kid would, getting outside, causing all kinds of chaos, and just sitting there and watching cartoons when you're supposed to be doing chores and stuff, or whatever, being a typical rebellious little kid. And so at this point in time, my mom, I don't remember if she was dating anyone, and I don't know when it had happened, but at some point in time, there was a man who became involved in my mom's life named Jason Pingree. This man, I don't know what led to my mom being attracted to this person at first. I was too young to even understand it. But every time I was in a room with him, my skin would crawl, and I'd have the overwhelming desire to puke and then proceed to find something to bludgeon him with. Okay? And I didn't understand why because I was a kid, I just knew there was something not right. I hated him. I couldn't stand it. So I used to drown it out by delving into stuff like watching Conan the Destroyer, Conan the Barbarian, getting just like past my eyeballs in the little kid cartoons to try to drown out my own instincts. Okay? Well, that was a big mistake, obviously, and we'll get to that part of the story in a bit as to why that was a mistake. Um, so anyway, after I get done at Dana Point, I had friends at Dana Point, by the way. It was great. I actually had a great time watching that. I think his name was Rodney, that I used to go to school with. Watching him get in trouble all the time just to get a second chance. This nice little colored kid that I called my friend. And if I could ever find him again, I'd probably add him back to my friends list because, to be honest with you, um, I always thought it was so entertaining watching him get his second chances. And back then, it was just innocent kid stuff. And I'll get to the moral of that story at the end. So anyway, I go to Dana Point, and then the bullying starts. But at this point in time, at that Christmas, my mom and her new man, Jason, decided to buy me two things. Well, three things technically. A Game Boy Pocket and this colored picture Bible that we have in this house. This is my grandmother's house that we're at, by the way. And yes, I do live in my grandmother's home. I have the express intention of purchasing this piece of property because I want it to stay in my family. It is the last piece of a bigger piece of farmland that the family owns that I intend to be able to keep. And the reason that I want to keep it is because I think that's important. Um, anyway, back to the story. So I used to dip out of reality and go play video games as much as I could. My dad could probably tell you tales of how many AAA or AA, I forget which batteries they were, he used to have to buy me every week. And it got to where he'd put a limit of a half an hour a day because I couldn't control how much I was playing because I was miserable. I was playing the nice kid, smiling all the time, laughing, and just trying to have a good time. But the reality is that I thought my life sucked. And the only reprieves I had was when he would take me into the dirt pits with our 22s and go shoot little milk jug caps, the little multicolored ones where you go to get, like whole milk where they're red, or the back when they used to have the yellow caps. It was probably one of the better times of my childhood. And then I started to get older, I started to grow up more, and some things happened, and we ended up moving to Alaska. Now, I can't explain how this had happened, but it was never really about my stepmom. It was never really about my dad, but moving to Alaska was probably the worst thing that could have happened to me as a kid. I'll explain that at the end of the video too. And here's what happened to me because of this. I was removed from my friends again, my family again. And at this point in time, the thought in my head that I'm not telling my dad and I'm keeping it in, which was my biggest mistake. This is not my dad's fault. Had I actually told him what I was thinking, he probably would have stepped in and fixed it, but because I was too young and dumb to communicate my feelings and how I was feeling about all this, and I didn't want to make him feel bad about how I felt, I made myself miserable to make someone else happy. And I'll tell you what that did to me later, too. And I had a couple of interesting experiences, like the time we were in, I believe it was Fairbanks, Alaska, at a campground for the summer, and a tree got struck by lightning near where our tent was. Excuse me. So after the bang, we heard this loud crackling noise and this crash, and it falls right by the tent that me and my stepbrother Chuck are in. And of course, he's running over. He's running to go get my mom, my stepmom, and my dad, and tell them what's going on. And at that point in time, I have I think he had the dog, but I had my chair, my folding chair, and my Bible, and I'm running, basically crying my eyes out, running away from something that I thought was trying to kill us. Only to later find out it was a tree. That's the story that my parents both know. My biological mom knows this story as well, so does my dad. But there's a story that they don't know. The story of a nice family that we met in Fairbanks, that were camped not too far away from where we were, and I learned how to climb a fence because their daughter taught me how to climb a fence. By the way, we weren't even supposed to be near that fence. It was actually trespassing, but I was a kid. I didn't know any better. She just said, "Hey, we can climb this fence. It sounds like fun, doesn't it?" We climbed it. I climbed up over it. I climbed back over it again. And she followed back through too. And we had a grand old time. She had a couple of siblings, and we'd laugh and have fun. It was a campsite. We were kids having fun, goofing off. Well, then all of a sudden it occurs to me that this is a campsite. It's temporary. We're going to have to leave at some point. And so I have that thought, and less than a day later, her parents and her are gone. And I realized then that that fun that I had had with those people was fleeting and temporary, and it would come to an end. Okay. I could deal with that. It hurt a little bit, but I dealt with it. Well, we went down. This one was a little bit painful for me, and it was my own stupid fault. We went down to the Kenai Peninsula after that, and I saw what looked like rhubarb, but it was fuzzy. Now, anyone from Alaska or certain parts of Canada and Seattle or Washington State generally know the plant I'm talking about, and it is not rhubarb. It has that nice big elephant ear that makes people think, "Oh, it's rhubarb." So I think it is. I said, "Hey, Dad, there's a whole bunch of rhubarb over here." He says, "Son, that's not rhubarb. It's poisonous. We can't eat it." He walked me over to this plaque and had me read this thing. And lo and behold, the plant in front of me was Devil's Club. So I said, "Why would you have a poisonous plant in a campsite?" I grabbed a stick wearing sandals, and I decided that I'd take it upon myself and this other kid that I met at the campsite with his beagle to cut down with a stick this poisonous plant. Now, rhubarb has a fun little effect. Rhubarb, when it comes in contact with your skin, has a chance to inflict blisters and rashes on your body. Emphasis on the blisters. I didn't really get the rash that bad. But the blisters, oh yes, on my feet. hmm And the neighbor kid's dog was just being a cute little puppy dog, stepped on my foot. You could imagine the horrendous sound I made at that point. So anyway, now after that was all said and done, I decided I was going to start trying to swing sticks at rocks because I had nothing better to do. I mean, we were out of double and triple A batteries, and half of the time my stepbrother was on the damn thing anyway, and I couldn't really use it, so kind of whatever. And his excuse was why he doesn't know what he's doing with it. Jerk. Still, I remember that. I remember that. Um, and yeah, I might remember it, but it's just kind of funny at this point. So anyway, I also remember a certain someone pulling out a clam the size of my head at the time and putting it into a 5-gallon bucket and someone getting spoken to about it too. I also remember that our peanut butter got invaded and I tried to sleep in a Rubbermaid tote because back then I was flexible enough to do it. So, at any rate, so here I am, just not quite in the third grade, just barely getting into the third grade, and I was having fun in Kenai. Everything was great. Then Bethel came. And I went from having a lot of fun and enjoying life to absolutely hating it. And I'll tell you how it happened, okay? And it wasn't because of the actions of my dad. You could accuse me of it being my fault, I guess, to a degree, fine, because, my attitude, whatever. It wasn't even because of my stepmom. They just happened to be associated with what caused it, and it really wasn't their fault. So we get out to Bush, Alaska, and we're in Bethel. And by the way, those who don't know, you've got Bush, Alaska, and then you have on the road system. If you're on the road system, that's places like Anchorage, Fairbanks, Valdez, Kenai, um, you know, other places like that. There are places in Alaska that you have to travel to by either bush plane or get lucky and land on a barge that can make it up one of the bigger rivers if it can make it that far. So, anyway, more to the point, I make friends in Bethel. I make tons of friends. Are you kidding? It was great. Um, and I also made some enemies too. And of course, because of how I had been raised on my with my mom's side of the family to that point to a degree too, because the whole time I was at my dad's grandparents' house, I also would occasionally go see my mom's grandparents because they lived basically in the same town, right? Well, my mom's parents anyway, not their grandparents. And my grandfather Leroy, and my grandma Cece, when we were little kids, they didn't have electricity at their house, right? Their house was your east, what a lot of off-gridder types wanted, like what they idealized basically, but it was the truth of the matter. It wasn't this romanticized thing. It was just their way of living and they enjoyed it, right? At that time. So I'd go out there and we'd chase each other through the woods with sticks and whatever else, and drink hot chocolate and read comic books, and occasionally my cousin Charity, who happened to be living with them at that point in time, would drag out the black and white Game Boy or the Super Nintendo, and we'd play video games occasionally. It didn't happen often. All right. But one of the things that my grandfather used to do with us is he'd take us out into the woods, and I used to, as a kid, not know what we were doing. I jokingly said, we're making tree forts. And my grandfather used to laugh at me and smile and say, son, these are not tree forts. It's called a lean to. Okay? And then he showed me how to start a fire in a campfire pit, how to use the break open glow sticks as a buzz saw, how to, and this is back when I was like my daughter's age 6, how to dig a pitfall trap. And then he'd take us back home and he'd break out these little kid bows. They weren't anything spectacular. I could barely pull the string back because little wimpy kid, you know. But I managed to learn how to do it eventually, and I got quite good at it at that age. Since then, I've kind of let it go, but and I shouldn't have. I have all the equipment necessary to go out and do this stuff, and I don't know why, but and this is really more the point of this video, and I will get to it. But back to the Alaska tidbits. Bethel, Alaska is where I went from being the good kid to the bad kid really fast. And I don't mean bad as in just doing drugs and picking fights. Oh no, bad as in almost a demon level bad child. I was not. And I will explain why it happened. Okay? I was forcibly moved every year to 2 years, bounced around from schools, removed from family and friends every year or 2 years. And I was perfectly fine to sit there and play pretend that I was happy until I got to Bethel. And it had more to do with just how bad Bethel could get during the winter. It didn't have anything to do with the summer. The place was actually pretty cool. But we're talking about a town that has no trees and is technically a part of coastal Alaska off of the Bering Strait, where the Bering Strait meets the Pacific Ocean. It gets cold, really cold there. And we try to have as much fun as we can. But when you stack up the fact that I had been basically lying to everyone, saying that I was doing just fine, okay, saying that I was perfectly happy and all this other garbage that was just a load of crap. And I only did it to make everyone happy because I didn't want to see or hear any more fighting. Okay? Well, about the time I was told that I couldn't hang out with my friends because, heaven forbid, they played with Pokemon cards and those are evil. About the time that I was picked on at school for the fact that I couldn't hang out with the other kids. And about the time that I was basically ostracized at every turn, that was where I started to get really mean. Because not only was I living this little lie of telling everyone that I was doing just fine and perfectly happy living with my dad, even though it was a crock of shit, now I have to get spit in the face at the people that I thought I was going to be making friends with and the people that I probably were supposed to be making friends with at that age, because my parents decided that these other people, the neighborhood kids, weren't okay to hang out with. Okay. All right. Well, then I started picking fights or getting into fights and getting violent. I started cussing and swearing. I started calling people names. I started doing some really bad stuff. And sure, okay, you could say that was my attitude and my responsibility, and you're right. You're right. Okay. But what was really the last straw for me and really sealed the deal as far as not getting along with my dad and my stepmom and just being a massive, massive fly in the ointment, or basically lighting their camp on fire at every turn, was when the school came around and told me I had to be put on special pills. These special pills were Wellbutrin. I was a child. I don't care how bad my daughter acts up. I don't care how bad any of my kids act up. I would never put my kids on that kind of pharmaceutical ever. I've got to feel how the pills made me feel, and I did not like it at all. Hated it. I felt like a zombie. It stripped me of my independence, or what little bit I thought I had. And then the school board said I had to take these pills or I couldn't come back to that school. Okay. Well, my dad, we tried it for a year. And I mean this not in the fact that I still feel this way, but at that age, because of that medication, I'm going to tell you a little secret. Because of what they did, I never said this out loud to anyone. This is the first time I've ever said this, but I'm going to say it right now. I wanted to light that house up with every single one of us inside it. And I'm telling you right now, that's how I felt every single day I was on those pills. Every single day, that's how I felt. So now you have kind of a stacking of emotions at this point that a kid that age, by the way, is not even remotely prepared to handle. Not even close. The pills did more damage too because they made it hard for me to regulate my emotions in general. Really hard. Really, really hard. It was like driving drunk blindfolded and half of your body's paralyzed at the same time. It was that hard, okay? I don't know who came up with that medication, but I have my theories, and it rhymes with Bucifer. Let's leave it at that, okay? Just straight up. You want to sit here and say that Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, and all this stuff is of the devil? No, those friggin' pills were. I probably could have learned to regulate myself better eventually after all the emotional shit I was going through anyway. If I didn't have those pills, I could have maintained some kind of focus and ability to navigate what was up here. Oh, no, no. Just keep them on the medication and bump the dosage up to an adult dosage by the 5th grade and see what happens. Anyway, we move out of Bethel after meeting some really nice people, getting into some shenanigans as a kid. I did some stuff with my friends. We got into all kinds of chaos and mayhem and all kinds of shit. But then we moved up to Chuathblock, which meant that I lost those friends again. I never... And this was before Facebook and Twitter and all that, so staying in contact just wasn't going to happen, right? This was back in the 90s and way early 2000s. Like, 9/11 hadn't happened yet, okay? So, out in Bush, Alaska, the internet was kind of this thing that we used at school to look up research stuff for school projects. We didn't know what it was really used for until we were introduced to the world of online games. In my case, it was this adorable little Digimon game where you played as Kai and Agumon, and you had to walk around destroying all the little slime things. I thought it was fun as a kid. It was great. It's probably one of the funner things I'd done. Anyway, then Chuathblock happened. Chuathblock left me all kinds of messed up. For a large number of reasons, but largely because the same thing happened again. We were there for a year and a half, 2 years, everything was fine as far as I was concerned. I mean, I was an angry kid that was causing trouble for my parents when I wasn't, playing with Legos or reading books or doing homeschool stuff, because halfway through my school year of my fourth grade year, they decided homeschooling was my best option. And by the way, it was homeschooling 100%. I may have been a little bastard, but it was probably the best thing that could have happened to me at that point in time. Like, outright. It isolated me from the kids, and it made what happened next a little less painful. But there's one part of this story that I didn't really tell, and that was the fact that I had a crush on one of the girls in the village. Okay? Now, her dad got into trouble a couple of times. My dad was a VPSO. A VPSO is a village public safety officer. They handle everything from search and rescue to fire to police work, you name it, right? So that put me on like this kind of weird, like, do not touch kind of thing, right? To everyone in the village. But as this kid, I didn't understand that. I didn't know that there was this racial divide at the fact that they were native kids and I was a white boy and my dad was the only cop in town. I didn't know this stuff. It was a freaking kid. It was fifth grade. The only thing I was interested in was snowboarding and sledding down hills during the winter and going out and getting into the woods and getting into trouble. We moved again. McGrath this time. McGrath. We lived in town. We had cable TV. I got to watch Pitch Black for the first time in my life before my dad and my stepmom even knew the TV was on. I enjoyed the movie. I thought it was great. It didn't scare me in the least. I got to listen to Amy Lee, the lead singer of Evanescence, for the first time. The song was Bring Me to Life, and I loved it. Absolutely. I thought it was great. Right? Okay. Cartoons were on Saturday morning. Everything was fine. I was going out and making friends and riding my bicycle and breaking my arm trying to jump over a culvert like a dummy. And yeah, I was bullied a little bit because, new kid in town. My dad was, yet again, one of two police officers in town, so naturally I was the target. Again, I still didn't quite understand why that was. So I come back to Maine for the summer. And by the way, there are visits to Maine throughout the summers. They haven't really been so consequential, right? But there was one summer about Mr. Dipshit. One summer. Okay? I believe I was 8 years old. No, I was older than 8. I don't remember exactly what age I was, but I do remember the event very well, what happened. My mom and the guy that she was with had split. Okay? She divorced him like that. And come to find out, my instincts were correct. This man was the most abusive asshole on the planet. He was physically beating my mother and my sister. And then my sister, when we're all playing at my grandma Cece's house, because we had come back down from Alaska for the summer to visit with everybody, my sister comes up to me and a group of my cousins and tells me that this man used to do things to her inappropriately, touch her in places that she shouldn't be touched, and did something really, really bad to her. So at that point, my brain, like that, I ran down that hill, raced my cousin down that hill, and I told my grandma Cece and I told my mother everything my sister had said. Now my sister, she doesn't want us to do that. Okay. Well, I'm sure glad we friggin' did. Because as it turned out that when my sister was 8 years old, not 8, when my sister was 6 years old, this man had been doing the unspeakable to a little girl in her own home where she was supposed to be feeling safe. This man's name was Jason Pingree. So I spent that summer. If I remember correctly, I actually had to stay a little bit longer than what was supposed to happen, and my dad did too. I'd stay with my mom, and I'd play Hercules and Crash Team Racing on the PlayStation 1. But the police came up to the place that my mom was staying, and I had to give a statement to the police about what my sister said, and nothing else. By the way, and I'm not going to wait till the end to tell this, this is a little off topic, but it's kind of something that really burns me so bad. You will never understand the hate. Well, some people out there will actually. I hate that man, Jason Pingree. I hate him so much for what he did. Hated. I still don't. You don't want to leave me alone with him. Let's put it that way. But hate is not the right word. Right now, it would just be outright retribution, and it might involve a wood chipper. It might not, but I'm gonna leave that alone. Right. Anyway, so McGrath happens. I get bullied. I break an arm. I'm coming back down to visit, and this arm cast, and I want to go shoot a bow with my grandpa Leroy, but I can't because the arm that I use to pull back the string is in a cast. It had been for about 2 months so far, and it started to stink, and it was itchy. Man, it was itchy. So my grandfather grabbed onto a Dremel and cut the cast off of my arm, but told me I still couldn't pull back the string on the bow for another 3 to 4 months until the rest of my muscles had come back from the apathy of not being used. Okay? And I of course, I'm sitting there like, oh, okay, well, that sucks. I still really wanted to, but thank you for freeing me from that stupid thing. Um, I go back to McGrath, and then my dad buys a piece of land out of town. Just like there was a road that connected the town to where my dad was putting the house, so getting to town was a ride in the car, right? The good old white Ford Exploder. A part of me kind of wants to know what happened to that car. Another part of me really doesn't care because I really hated that car. I didn't hate it when it was wintertime. Believe me, it was better than riding on the back of a four-wheeler. But, like, every time I was in that car, I just... Ugh. Not so funny story, but McGrath, we get out of church and we go to my dad's office and we're doing something and no one had noticed, but there was an open rubber on the antenna of the car. And I'm like 6th grade at this point. I'm like, what is that thing? I didn't know. I'm just like, Dad, did someone put an ornament on the antenna while we were at church or something? And he goes to his office, grabs the trash can and throws it away. And we never really spoke about it after that, but that winter, if I'm not mistaken, was the winter that one of the local kids, actually it wasn't the winter, it was the summer of that winter, where one of the local kids had fallen into the river. I won't use his name because I don't want the family to be upset with me, and I still have a great deal of respect for them. It was my first time seeing someone around my age in a casket. And, you'd think, oh my God, that sounds traumatic. No, it really wasn't to me because, that was the reality of life out in Bush, Alaska, is that it could happen. You step off into that river in the wrong part, and where the ice had gouged out because the ice breaks out of that river in chunks the size of a house, it'll dig up the bottom of that river and turn it into a meat grinding blender, basically. Like, if you've ever watched Naruto and you see how the Rasengan operates, it's like being shoved into the center of that, but it's water. It's terrible. So, anyway, it sucked this poor boy down, and that was it. At that point in time, I I almost vehemently refused to drink water, let alone go swimming in it. It was nearly impossible to get me to take a shower because I was afraid of this shit, right? Because one of the kids in the village my age died in water. I didn't quite my brain didn't wasn't capable because of the medication I was on to process how the water in the river was different from the water that would get me clean and keep me hydrated. So it was a fight. I was afraid. And eventually I was forced to get over that fear without any sort of consolation or consultation. It was just a go take a fucking shower. I'm going to fucking shower you for you and you're not going to like it. And then my body, of course, didn't like the fact that I wasn't drinking water. And I'd start getting severe headaches. And I was like, oh, why is this happening? And then one of the teachers at the school, before I got homeschooled for the second time, told me that, yeah, you need to be drinking water because your body needs it to function. And I'm like, but it's deadly. And, I'm this stupid kid. I don't know what the hell I'm saying. I'm on drugs, for crying out loud. Prescribed drugs at that. So he's like, yeah. Well, there you go. Drink some water, right? Hands me an ibuprofen. And I did skip over the story about the TB tests. That will be comedy relief at the end. Oh, this phone. Yep, I'm a little busy. Um, anyway. So, I make a couple of friends, I make a couple of enemies, the usual stuff happens, and I'm actually quite comfortable in McGrath, right? You'd think that I would have been absolutely spiteful and hateful in McGrath. And I may have been a little mean, and I may have said some things I probably shouldn't have, and I definitely did some things I shouldn't have done that I really can't say on YouTube because, again, terms and service. But then I hear murmurs and whispers from my dad and my stepmom that they don't want to be there anymore. And I knew what that meant at that point in time. And that right there, that was when the straw broke the camel's back. That was when enough was enough. I had had it. Enough. So they tried to move us back to Maine, actually. But on the way to Maine, and this part is not their fault, this part I blame the Dodge Chrysler Company for. Because they did this stupid thing with their diesel pickup trucks where they put the computer that controls the fuel injection system and just about everything else in the truck on top of the engine where it's going to overheat. So, we're going to be in this Dodge pickup truck with all our stuff in the back of the truck, and I think there may have been a U-Haul or a trailer of some kind that we're using, I'm not sure. But they were going to bring us back to Maine. We were going to come back and be with the rest of the family, and things were going to, get fixed, and everything was going to be great. And then we made it to Tok. We got a Fast Eddie's pizza at Fast Eddie's in Tok. And then the truck wouldn't start. Almost like God had said, no, screw you. You're staying in Alaska. You wanted this. You cursed your family with this, and now you're going to have to live with it. Almost as if me saying, when I was a kid, trying to make everyone else happy that I was fine. I was happy and okay. That I had to live with what I had said. See, at the time, I didn't know anything, the first thing about vehicles when I was at that age. And my dad, I love you, Dad, but a master mechanic and a good teacher, he is not. Okay? So there was no way in hell he's going to take the money to go get the part and just slap a new one in there, relocate it off to the firewall away from the hot spot in the engine, and just boogie right on down to Maine, just like he said he was going to. Like I would do. Oh no. We end up in Valdez. And Valdez was the final straw. Valdez was when you've gone beyond breaking the camel's back to you've kicked the dead horse enough to where the horse has come back to life and is ready to kick your ass. That was where I was at. I was done. Done with my dad, done with my stepmom, done with the church, done with the pastors screeching at me because I'm being an angry little fucking kid who's sick of being moved around every year or two because his dad feels the urge to bounce around all over the place like worse than a crackhead on his first time doing methamphetamines. Okay? That was it, you know? So I did all kinds of bad stuff there. My dad told me Yu-Gi-Oh cards were of the devil. I'd have a set of them hidden in my friggin' locker, and I'd be trading them at school all the time. I was using my locker as basically the town dump. I was threatening other kids. I was picking fights. I was kicking doors into teachers. I was doing all kinds of nasty shit. There wasn't a day I wasn't suspended. And if there were, they were few and far fucking between. And I was told I had to be put in counseling. And you know what? The fact that the counselor, Lucia Hedman, got her... no, she's still alive, but nicest woman ever. No, it wasn't Lucia. Lucia was the special ed teacher. It was Teresa, I think was her name, was the school counselor. And the fact that she went to the same church as us did not help me. It did not help me at all. Because I did not feel comfortable telling her anything. Because I knew it would lead right back to my parents, and if I told her how I felt, how I really felt about things, it'd go right back home, and it'd turn into a fucking fight. So, it was what it was. And I also made friends there. I was quite satisfied with the people in Valdez. They weren't my problem. I didn't have a problem with the people of Valdez, Alaska. Andrea, Danielle, even the kid that used to pick on me and bully me, Thomas. I didn't have a problem with any of them. I thought it was great. I was able to live a normal life. But in the back of my head, I always knew that at some point, just like the last 10 times, it was going to get ripped away from me again. And the worst part about it was Danielle, I had developed a crush on her too. We were friends in middle school. And, yeah, things were okay. But then I did the thing that turned all that on its head. We came back to Maine. My dad was sitting in this very living room. And I stood up right in front of my grandmother, his mother. The woman is sitting maybe 10 feet, 15 feet from me right now. And I let it out in the worst way possible. I didn't tell him anything good that had happened. Every bad thing that had happened. And I nailed him in the head with it as hard as I could, proverbially speaking. I hit him with all the bad energy I could possibly throw at a person to the point where his face was, you see that color red right there? His blood pressure had gotten so bad, his face was that color. He was about to have a stroke or a heart attack, and I was keeping going. All right. Now, as a 33 something, 34 something year old man, I look back at that and I feel bad. And ever since then, it's been the most awkward time talking to my dad because he said the one thing that I had wanted him to say for the longest time, and that is, I don't know how to deal with you. You're going to go live with your mother. And boy, was that a mistake on my part. Not because I had to go live with my mother, but because of what I did next. I went to my mom to live with her in New Hampshire. I went to A. Crosby Kennett back when the Kennett High School building was still in Center Conway, not North Conway. Oh boy. Man, there's a list this long that I keep up here with names of people and one person in particular that I owe apologies to. And nothing that I've said in this video is an excuse for any of it. Okay? The one name that I will mention and drop in this video is Caitlin O'Callahan. You know who you are if you ever see this video. I am sorry. I fucked up. And I think I may have fucked you up in the process, and I hope I did not. But if I did, I am so sorry. And no, I will not be telling the rest of the world what happened. That is your voice, that is your ability to say. And if you ever choose to tell them what happened between us, that is you, okay? But I cannot do it here, and I will not do it here. I am not going to steal your story from you. So, I dated Caitlin, things happened, we broke up. The same thing happened with me and a girl named Kim, and me and a girl named Brittany. Brittany was only like a 2-day thing. I didn't know what I was doing. I seriously didn't. Like, not even a inkling of a clue, right? Some more things happened. Shenanigans happened. My grades dropped because I was bored in school. I knew the subject material, but I wasn't taking it seriously. And I failed the placement test because I wasn't taking it seriously. I was just kind of done with the whole thing. And I have proof of that too, and I'll get on to that in just a minute. My mom did the same exact thing that my dad did. I deserve to be happy. I'm gonna go move down to Arkansas. I had friends. I was playing Magic the Gathering and Yu-Gi-Oh cards after school with my friends, having a good time, learning how to be a kid for the first time without feeling like I had to worry about being moved ever again because I was with the other parent. Boy, was I wrong. hmm So she drugged me down to Arkansas, alright? And the same attitude that I had towards my father was starting to reflect on my mother. hmm And it was almost like the most pure vitriolic hatred that you'd ever experience. All the stuff that I could possibly think of to try to make her as miserable as possible, and her friends too. hmm I did. I did. And it got so bad, I got on the phone with my grandmother, and my mom did too. And they arranged a plane ticket for me. I had to leave behind my little black Pomeranian puppy dog named Shadow. He used to have a little white dot right here on his little puppy dog chest, and I had to give him up because they couldn't afford to bring a dog up here. And then I went to school again until I hit my junior year in high school. And I dropped out because I was smoking pot with a friend, and school was boring me, and I just couldn't stay there because it was driving me nuts watching all the kids have the time of their lives, knowing in my head that at any minute before, knowing full well graduation was 2 years away, that it'd be over before I could even get to know any of these people. They'd be out of my life anyway, so what was the point? Despair started to set in. And I met this kid named RJ who was actually a pretty good friend to me, and mom was his mom was like a second mother to me. And we'd been through it, ups and downs, the whole 9 yards. But we also were doing drugs and going and hanging out with some of the wrong people, if you catch my drift. The people who encourage you to do pills up your nose and do bad things, really bad things. And me and RJ, largely we would stay at his place and just smoke pot and, play, what was it, Saints Row, I think it was at that point in time. I got to do all the little bitchy shit of, the missions that were just like repetitive, stupid stuff. But I was fine with it. I got to play the damn game. I was grateful for that. And then I got my own Xbox, and then I didn't have anyone to do the little missions like that. But I also was introduced to the Resident Evil games, and I enjoyed them. Uh-oh. Okay. Um... But back to the story at hand. So anyway, I meet up with this girl. We date for a little bit. We break up. We date again. It's a whole mess, right? It's a whole mess, and I won't use her name here because she lives not too far from where I am, and she knows her side of the story, and I'm gonna let her, if she ever decided to come on here and tell her side of it, I would almost rather have her just tell her side of the story. It wasn't a particularly abusive relationship. I was just very lost. Okay? And then my life got hit in the dick just about as hard as it possibly could. This was back in 2009. Okay? Obama was president. The U.S. military had been overrun with GED applicants for years. Okay? And I understood why I got rejected. It wasn't hard to understand. They definitely didn't use like some sort of fancy military term like telling me I was 4F or anything. Well, they did, but for a different reason later. I was rejected for when I wanted to join the army, and I never really fully recovered from it either. I like to sit here and say, yeah, well, I went to college and learned how to work on cars, and that's been the direction of my life, and blah, blah, blah. The reality is that I spent a decent portion of my life saying the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, being taught that this. Hello? Yeah, goodbye. Um, Being told that this was one of the best nations on the planet. Okay. Now, I wasn't political at that point. Don't misunderstand me. Um, I actually thought it was pretty cool that Obama was president. I didn't know most of the stuff that he was doing. I didn't really care. It had no effect on me at that point in time. Not really. Not as a kid. Okay. Or, well, a younger adult at that point. But I was very hurt. I was angry, but I understood it. But it still didn't change the hurt and anger, right? So I do more drugs. I go back to doing drugs. By the way, leading up to that, I actually cut my friend RJ out of my life because I didn't want to be around drugs anymore, so I could pass the physical stuff to get into the military. I just like no, I don't want anything to do with it. I want it in my body. Just keep your distance for a little bit. I'm gonna see if I can't get in the military, and they were actually supportive of it. They were. They actually gave me the space, and they were very decent people about it. Um, but then it just like I don't know if I can explain what it felt like. It felt like my whole country told me I was worthless, basically. And it wasn't because the recruiter just told me the truth. He didn't say anything out of the ordinary. He wasn't mean about it. He just told me I need to lose like 30 pounds and he can't take me right now because of the GED. And then they put a stethoscope right here and they said he has an irregular heartbeat. And at that point in time, almost like someone had grabbed onto my spine with a hand made of the blackest ice ever imaginable, my whole body just went into total shock and numbness. Like, I didn't think that that was an issue in my body at that point in time. And lo and behold, there it was. And he didn't even have to say it because I had played enough Call of Duty to know that someone with a heart condition is not going to make it into the military because you can't have someone who's just going to drop dead from a natural cause in the middle of a fight. It's not going to work. But it didn't change the amount of pain that it brought. And boy, did I spiral bad. Real bad. Mixing booze with pills, smoking pot like it was like a fat man eating Doritos, and not eating stuff to go with it either. I mean, I was just outright like vengefully smoking grass. Basically, I was mad. I was mad at myself. I was mad at my country. I was mad at a lot of different things at the time. And then I got back with one of my exes and tried to move in, and it failed. And then my family that lived in my state told me enough was enough and that I had to go move to Arkansas back with my mom. So, me being me, I said, I know YouTube's probably going to want me to censor this stuff, but I'm not going to. I quite literally said, fuck you, I'll go where I want. They said, fine, but you can't be here. So I went down to Little Rock and moved in with one of my Xbox Live friends, Mark Merriman. Good guy. Great guy. His mom was amazing too. And instead of being a decent human being and getting a real job and trying to get my driver's license, all I wanted to do was sit there and play video games and just fuck off. Because I was done being told what to do at every fucking turn. I was done being everyone's little bitch. And I thought that me putting my foot down and doing what I wanted to do for a change was some sort of sick show of dominance. And by the way, I'm not saying sick as in like twisted. I mean that as in awesome, like wicked, or whatever slang kids are using these days nowadays, right? Well, after a couple of years of that, I go up to Alaska to work in the Eisenhotsky General Store in False Pass, Alaska. My dad had paid for me to go up there, and it's probably one of about two things that he's done to help me as an adult. Okay, the other one was replacing tires on a car. I will never say the man has never helped me, because he has. And there's a but attached to it, but I don't know how to word it. So let me finish the story about me and Mark and all of that. Me and Mark got into a fight. And after that fight, I packed up my stuff and moved in with my mom in Coal Hill, Arkansas. Coal Hill, Arkansas, and the surrounding area is the place that has earned my personal, permanent blacklist. Not because the area or the people, but because of what happened to me there. I cannot go back mentally and handle it. Not because I don't want to, but because it will be the thing that breaks me entirely, and I probably won't come back alive. So, and this story is going to be the pain. This part of the story is going to be the most painful part of the story that I can tell. I met a girl. Her name was Erica. I won't use her last name for the sake of her privacy, but she knows who she is. So I'm thinking things are fine, whatever. I come home from college with her brother. And we had plans to party because, we were in school and we were just douching it, doing the usual college student douchebag thing, right? But we were going to school. We were getting passing grades. I was doing pretty well. And then I hear these weird moaning and groaning noises from the back bedroom, and lo and behold, she's on the phone with someone doing something that I can't say on YouTube. I don't take it well. I go out into the living room. I'm mad. I'm hurt. And I just really don't want to have anything to do with it. And boy, did it ever come out the next morning too. But anyway, I got my mitts on the Everclear that I had been mixing with Mountain Dew previously. I'd only used about that much off the top of the bottle and had been mixing it with Mountain Dew. And I just said, screw the Mountain Dew. That's exactly what I did. I I hauled that back like it was water. And then I watched TV in the living room until I passed out in the chair. Well, lo and behold, I was told that I had been dead for what felt like 5 minutes to them was an eternity for me. I saw things. And by the way, before you say anything, her grandfather was a Navy man. He knew how to check a pulse. He said he could not find one on me anywhere. And I came to and puked in a 50-gallon trash can that was in the house that was supposed to be for cleaning the house. I just, all throughout it, right? The most powerful part of that experience was seeing a giant sandaled foot kick me back into my body and telling me it's not my time. But the stuff I saw before that was absolutely horrific, and you people have no idea what's coming. All I'm going to tell you is just read your Bibles and pray. because he's coming and he's not happy. Anyway, so I break up with Erica because of this event. And then I meet this girl online named Ashley. She worked as a nurse at a local nursing home, and things were okay when she was at her mom's house, and everything was fine. And then we moved into my mom's house, and things weren't so fine anymore. Well, then she got pregnant, and you would think that I'd be paying child support to this day. And God, I kind of wish for that beyond, because what happened was so much worse. It was so much worse, and it's a painful part of the story. It is the painful part of the story that tore my heart out of my chest and threw it in a meat grinder. We went from scheduling an ultrasound to me scrubbing blood out of the passenger seat of my stupid Honda. She had a miscarriage, and I lost my child. We lost our child, and then because of that, we couldn't handle it, and we lost each other. And I have not been able to reconcile with that level of anger and pain ever since. And there's something that's going on right now that relates to this story. And when I get to the end of this, I'm going to have a bit of an outrage video of my own. I've been trying to remain calm throughout this whole thing for the purpose of showing that I have control of my emotions and how I feel. So, I end up coming back to Maine. Things don't really go so well, and then I meet my daughter's mother, and we have my daughter, and we break up, and my life at that point is still numb from the whole thing with Ashley. I couldn't even believe that I had a kid. But it was so distanced for me. I didn't actually get to be a dad because I was so emotionally effed up that I couldn't even realize what had happened. And I acted accordingly, apathetic, angry, just wasn't there for it at the time. And it cost me my relationship with my daughter's mother. And it cost me my ability to be there to raise my daughter full time. Which just proceeded to fuck me up even more. Okay. Well, now my daughter's 6. She enjoys soccer, and I enjoy going to her soccer games. And me and her mother get along good as friends. Her mom remarried a good man who I consider a close friend. Even though we don't talk all the time. I've dated a few people here and there since then, and some other things have happened in my life that I'm not going to talk about publicly because they're private matters. And I know there's been a lot of private information in this video, but now I'm happily engaged to be married, and we're saving up to buy my grandmother's house and trying to build up a piece of land that my mom is considering giving us up in northern Maine. And things are going okay. Life is okay right now. And then Donald Trump gets elected for the second time. Life is at its best for me because I wanted him to get elected. And then I run into these morons on Twitter. The left. And I'm not talking about the casual leftoids that say, her body, her choice, blah, blah, blah. No. I'm talking about the version of the left that says abortion is great. I had 20 something abortions and I intend to have more, that part of the left. And I didn't care because they had their own opinions. And I kept my mouth shut. And then They started to sit around and say all this bullshit about Trump and how it's illegal to have a miscarriage and how ectopic pregnancies are handled through abortions and all this other disgusting shit. Well, I can handle disgusting shit. But when you start telling people that miscarriages are bad and you're wrong for having them and you might as well have had an abortion, congratulations. Throughout all of my life, I've had enemies. But I've tried my best not to be an enemy to anyone. But you fucking people just made a fucking enemy. And you know what? Within the bounds of the law, I have every intention of getting Republicans elected and re-elected as much as fucking possible, because you have just crossed what will politically be your fucking Grim Reaper. There is nothing wrong with a woman having a miscarriage. My son died because of a medical condition, and you can fuck yourself. I'm done with you fucking idiots. Every last one of you, I hope when God does come back, I hope he comes back fiery sword in hand, and I hope he just starts fucking swinging. You will not know a moment of rest with me around. You can threaten to kill me all you want, but you never will. And I will be on Twitter at every turn, just like Colin Rugg was, making your lives fucking miserable. You know what this look is? This stare right here. You're worried about women's rights? I got a better idea. Worry about what's going to happen to you after this world. When God's looking at you in your face and says, I know you not. Worry more about that next time before you go off and berate people for having miscarriages, because every last one of you have just hit the scumbag award of the fucking year with me. And yes, I am heavily censoring what I really want to say, because if I said what I really wanted to say, I'd probably have about 30 federal agents at my door, because I'm of the right-wing mental political status, and I hate you fucking people. And the second that I say anything that could have them at my fucking door, I know that they're gonna rip that fucking door open and drag me the fuck away. They won't do it to you. Oh no, you can sit here and say, oh, if I ever see a white guy, oh, I guess it's going to be a fun date for my Glock. All you fucking want, and they won't do a damn thing to you, because your side of the aisle owns them. But the second I say even something even remotely close to that, that's not even remotely a direct threat, I'm going to have my door kicked open. So fuck you, fuck your ideology, fuck your pronouns, and go fuck yourself in a corner. We're done. There will be no reconciliation. I will make your party feel your stupidity for decades. This video's fucking over. Oh, well, not quite. The funny story, actually, that did happen when I was a kid. I'll tell that in another video. But fuck you. You will get no reconciliation from me. I am going to make it my life's mission to make you people feel my anger, politically speaking.